Good day everyone, so hope you're all doing really well. In today's video we're going to be looking at a Qucusaur flying underwater in Fontaine. It's not the first thing that you would think of doing in Genshin, but for today's quirky video, if you're interested in this type of exploration, we'll be mostly covering that. And today's video is split into two parts. So what I'm going to do is give you a bit of a guided tour, explain some of the observations of being underwater with a Qucusaur, and then the second half of the video will just have unvoiced, unedited raw footage for you to skip around, look at, just so you can see all of the bits of exploration that I did, because I simply can't cover it all by myself or comment on all of it. It is quite expansive. Okay, so let's just begin with the obvious. Yes, bringing a Qucusaur into Fontaine requires a bit of a couple of glitches. It requires a bit of skill. You need to break out of the map, you need to go under the map, you need to do some very clever parkour, and obviously getting Paimon also involves a glitch, so there's a lot of skill involved in getting that. But once you are here, you'll notice a couple of very interesting things. So the first thing is that you are not actually underwater, you're just on plain land flying through the air. What actually happens is that everything around you is also flying or floating in the air, and that is the secret to Genshin's underwater. Basically, if you remember, there are some events where your character floats through the air and you've got to complete certain rings of puzzles and stuff. Yeah, effectively your character just flies through the air and it seems like it's underwater when you're in Fontaine, which is pretty cool. It's a bit of a, I know for some people I've completely ruined their Fontaine immersion just by saying that, but that is effectively the discovery that I've made in the current moment. Another discovery that I've made is that the game itself actually registers two special states when you're underwater. The first being, like as you can see here, is where everything is loaded in, but in a certain sense all of the triggers or a lot of the triggers are not activated because you don't have an active character underwater. And later in the video I'll show you what happens when we exit the Qucusaur underwater and just how instantly the scene changes and stuff. So what happens now when you are in this state? Well, a couple of things is that you'll notice is that the skybox is very clear, so you can clearly get far more of an effect of, or like the feeling that you're walking in a very hyper saturated environment underwater. So this is typically more representative of those old like PlayStation games where your character walks underwater, or you're playing as a sea creature. It kind of gives you that effect. And also a couple of other things to note is that things like your Qucusaur being able to be sucked up, as you can see here with this little mechanic here, and that doesn't work. The little rings that accelerate you through the water or through the air, they don't work either on the Qucusaur. The vortices, they also don't work. So a couple of things just don't work because the Qucusaur is considered a wave rider by the game. You're effectively being transported now, so that's why a lot of the mechanics that are supposed to be coded for a character just don't apply. Due to the nature of this glitch, certain things like the challenges are you can activate them underwater, but there really is no point. And then obviously because of not the glitch itself but being in this state underwater, certain puzzles and mechanics don't seem to be active, whereas the moment you swap to a character they become active, which is really interesting. I think a very good example is that little small treasure chest that you can see on the screen. So normally you'd want to get the little mantis ray and then cut the vines, get the chest, and then obviously that's kind of the puzzle solved. But in this case you can see the chest and everything has loaded in except the little bubble around the chest and the areas that you need to cut it, but you can see we can't interact with the chest in any meaningful way. And funnily enough, I've still got a Shrine of Depth that I haven't opened here in Fontaine. I also noticed that the Shrine of Depth is also unloaded in terms of the what do you call it, the little walls around it, the little see-through panels, but the barrier is still there, so you can't act or like interact with the chest, although given the Qucusaur's like clawing range, you can still actually physically hit the chest and have the hit marker go off. So listen. Very, very interesting. Or maybe I'm misinterpreting it. You can let me know down below in the comment section. But yeah, so there are a couple of really, really cool things here. Obviously, with the Qucusaur, we have to manually like walk up onto ledges and then fly down. So it is a bit of a chore to explore the underworld like this, but it does give you a bit of a different sense for how the environment looks when it's not as cool and dark as it is when the normal lighting effects kind of show up, and I'll show to you a very, very interesting case of that. So as I was exploring with the Qucusaur, one thought that I had is, was what happens when you go into those areas where you can go into what do you call it, when you go out of the underwater state and then back into the underwater state, you know, this little box in front. I thought it might be really, really interesting just to see that effect. And what you'll notice is that, well, with my Curiosity, the windows don't seem to load in, but you'll notice something really, really weird as we get very, very close to it. So notice how the skybox changes. It just suddenly, it feels like it's desaturated, saturated. You can see it's I obviously had a bit of a ton of fun like just messing around with this, because at the time I didn't know what was happening. I also didn't know that you can't actually enter this, so I went all around the map and I found that you cannot enter any of these places with a Qucusaur. And yet on my YouTube channel there is a video with a Caholasaurus that I actually brought into Fontaine at the Fontaine Research Institute, like where the cubes are. And you can actually enter the underwater, in air quotes, from the side with the Caholasaur and any other saurian, including the Qucusaur, and you can actually enter back out. But it's very interesting that these places underwater, that you can't actually enter them. So I don't know exactly what's up with that, or whether there was some special gimmick that Hoyo coded. But as you can see, I mean, obviously as a Genshin glitcher, I try different things. I try attacking this thing from different angles, trying to see maybe if I can get the loading, maybe lucky with the loading. You always try different combinations and variations, but I decided, look, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm just going to be completely fixated by the change in lighting, because I don't know, it's just one of those little things. And then, yeah, after getting pretty bored of this, I just decided to move on. So a couple of things to mention with the Qucusaur. Most of the enemy aggro doesn't really activate or trigger when you're nearby. The fishes, obviously, as you've seen, don't heal the Qucusaur. You can engage with the enemies in combat. Certain interactables happen here, but generally speaking, it is a very pleasant time when you're underwater. Some of the big bosses, like the crab, if you watch the footage a bit later on, the unedited footage, you'll see the big crab, like the underwater boss. He just literally just chills there. He doesn't care that there's like a chicken running, you know, underwater. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, guys, that's mostly it for this guided tour. I think let's just do the final thing in this video, which I think is really, really awesome. What happens when we exit the Qucusaur underwater? So a couple of things you'll see here. I've got Nilo, and notice exactly how quickly the scene is going to change, and also notice the HUD. It's not going to be the same HUD as you'd have when you normally enter the water. And this is just due to the nature of the glitch that I'm running, and I think it's also due to the fact that we exited a Qucusaur underwater, so Nilo can't use her left click, you know, the one that you use to do all the puzzles with. And by the way, you can't enter the Qucusaur under Fontaine. Even once you exit the glitch, the Qucusaur is unobtainable. Alright, but that's been it for this adventure. For the rest of the video, I'm going to keep quiet. It's unedited. Feel free to skip around, look and see if you can discover the same things I've discovered, and let me know what you think of all this down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers!